Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a prime time edition of Sirhan on X, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, outdoors tonight here in the United States, residing in a small town called New Richmond, which is about 20 minutes east of the Cincinnati suburbs in the main area. First day after Election Day, just want to say I don't have a dog in this fight. Just want to give personal congratulations to Donald Trump for the victory. Uh, what can you say? He won the popular vote, the electoral vote. Say what you want about him, but he won fair and square. You can say what you want, do what you want. It doesn't matter. The right guy won. It is what it is. Uh, got some new followers over the last few days. So I just want to. I like to introduce myself to the newer followers because this is the new platform these days. Instead of typing 4,000, 5,000 word essays, I'd rather do this because it's more real time. You get to see more facial reaction, a whole bunch of other things on top of it. Um, Doing this now in prime time because I have a commitment to a full time job, which I completed 12 hours today. Still fresh and nice because I had a middle of the day. I chugged in some coffee. I'm still a little buzzed over it, but it's taking my show at nights. I had to do shows outside my own house because especially with decent weather like this, we're basically in the 60s today. It rained earlier, but it's dried up and complete. Um, Hope everyone out there had a wonderful day on this October 6th. This is going to be November 6th, 2024. Of course, it's the day after Election Day here in the United States. Hope you guys was able to vote and have your voices heard because the people are the voices at the end of the day. Now, just a little introduction of my show for some new viewers out here. This has to do with the fact that you know I like to arrange in a whole bunch of topics, sports related wise. The top ones being the NFL, the NBA, boxing, sometimes some MMA in the UFC field. I like to explore areas in baseball and soccer. Actually, this Saturday, my show will be live at TQL Stadium for the game three of the Major League Playoff Series involving FC Cincinnati. I look forward to that particular game. I'll discuss it on Saturday when the time comes. Usually midweek, this is the week where we start to divulge into the NFL week. So I give my picks like everybody else does. I have a differentiating view than others because I don't go with the grain. I stay in my own lane. I am my own individual. I am my own person. I don't do things because everybody else does it. That's the thing. That's the thing that riles people up about me, because I've been an independent going back to my boxing years when I seen fighters like the four kings of Leonard Hearns, uh, Hagler, and Duran, just to name many others. And I give my own views. Whether you agree or disagree, it's fine with me. I don't hold grudges if you disagree with me. I don't pat you on the back if you agree with me because it's an opinion at the end of the day. So now we're going to start my NFL week 10 starts tomorrow. And of course, the big one here in Cincinnati is Cincinnati going to Baltimore. This has the makings of another shootout like it was week 5 here in Cincinnati. Um, but when you go to Baltimore on a Thursday night, it's a bit of a different vibe, especially when teams in the AFC North go over there. Um, I don't expect this to be any different than the first meeting here because still both defenses are still in the bottom 10. It's just surprising to me when you consider the personnel both Cincinnati and Baltimore had. You think they would be better, especially when you consider Trey Hendrickson is one of the elite pass rushers, the AFC Defensive Player of the Week in Cincinnati, originally deserved. And of course, Baltimore, their personnel, we think of Kyle Van Noy, Odofa Owe, Marlon Humphrey, and of course, the safety Kyle Hamilton. Uh, I said this game's going to come down to who's the better quarterback and who's the better running back. And those fall in Baltimore. It's going to be another shootout. I think it's going to be a 35-30 type ball game. I think, both offenses can be real juggernauts when they really get going. Of course, it's likely that T. Higgins isn't playing for Cincinnati. Somebody's going to have to play it over their head. This is not the Raiders. It's the Ravens. And on a Thursday night where basically it's a different aura in Baltimore, I think Baltimore is going to find a way to get this one done at home. I think it should be a good game. We consider the compare and contrasting styles of the offenses and defenses, the coaching staffs, the personnel. AFC North tussles are always going to be something. Always, uh, we get two AFC North teams to bring the best out of each other. But I will take Baltimore at home simply because they have the better quarterback, the better running back, and the better head coach. That's what it comes down to. I think it'll be close because Cincinnati knows for them to at least contend for a playoff spot, they need this win, and I think they're going to play better and do whatever they can to win and hang around. But I think Baltimore just has too much. Probably about I would say too much. It should be a close game. About the 35-31 type shootout like it was week 5 in Cincinnati. So give me Baltimore at home. Now for the early games. Uh, I'm not going to whizzle through this because with the playoffs coming, we're going to focus on the playoff teams. I'm going to be doing the same thing. First one here is the Giants and the Panthers. Give me Carolina at home. Neither team going anywhere, obviously, but I think Carolina playing a little better of the two. Ever since Daniel Jones signed the contract, he's been absolutely abysmal. The guy's fascinating and banging a coward named Kay Adams, but that's another story for another day. Patriots and Bears. I think Chicago still hanging in there for a playoff spot, but give me them at home because again, New England's not going anywhere. Storyline here: San Francisco at Tampa Bay. Christian McCaffrey is supposed to be back, which I think is going to help a lot because I know Jordan Davis has some kind of an AC joint issue, I believe. But I think bringing back Christian McCaffrey is going to make the difference. Give me um, San Francisco on the road because I still think Baker Mayfield, although he's playing well, still struggles to find targets. He does have a standing tight end named Cade Otton, who's very sound, but not having his two receivers and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans is going to be an issue. And plus, their defense hasn't been all that great. I think San Fran finds a way to eke this one out. I think they start to get going here a little bit, especially when they start to get bodies back. Denver to Kansas City. Kansas City is going to go in this game undefeated, and they're going to leave the game undefeated. Nothing more needs to be said. Premier coach, premier quarterback. We're going to see Patrick Mahomes in the MVP talk here soon because I think there was a turning point Monday night when they beat Tampa. He basically looked like the Patrick Mahomes everybody knows. Didn't turn the ball over. Played the way everybody knows. Don't be surprised by the year's end. He basically leapfrogs everyone, a lot of the quarterbacks and players in the MVP conversation. I think it starts here Sunday. Buffalo and Indy. Buffalo pretty much has the AFC East wrapped up. What can you say? Indy's fighting for a playoff spot, but I think Buffalo wants to try to get everything done sooner. Give me Buffalo on the road. I think it'll be sizable. I mean, Josh Allen's playing pretty darn well right now. You have to give him that. Didn't play all that great against Miami, I didn't think, but still, I think they come back and handle business rather convincingly against Indy. Maybe the early game of the game of the day of the early schedule is Pittsburgh and Washington. Jaden Daniels against that stout defense of Pittsburgh is going to be the interesting matchup here. One of the surprise trades they did was they got Preston Scott from Green Bay to help solidify the defensive line depth, especially if someone like TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith or even a Cam Hayward goes down. He can fill in the voids adequately there. I think that's going to be the matchup. Of course, the other side is Pittsburgh's offense, who added Mike Williams, going against a Washington defense who hasn't been the greatest, but they did add Marcus Lattimore. I think this one has the makings of a 24-20 type ball game. Coming out to the last play, who do you trust here, Russell Wilson or Jaden Daniels? I think right now Jaden Daniels has passed the eye test with flying colors. You probably have to take him here. Give me Washington at home, albeit very, very close. Wouldn't surprise me if Pittsburgh pulled it out, but the way Washington's playing right now, it's hard to go against them. And of course, Minnesota at Jacksonville. Jacksonville not going anywhere either. Their bad investment in Trevor Lawrence hasn't panned out, but it is what it is. Minnesota takes this one on the road. I think they get a bounce back here after stumbling over the last couple of weeks. Falcons at Saints. Give me Atlanta on the road. They're gonna cruise to the NFC South now, and Kirk Cousins and Bijan Robinson, I think, is going to put up big numbers for your fantasy owners. You better add Kirk Cousins and Bijan Robinson to your teams. I think they're going to have a big day. I think after the Marcus Lattimore trade, it's time for the firing of Dennis Allen. Finally, time for the Saints to start to tank for a higher pick and clean the books because they've been in a salary cap mess for a long time. So that's the early games. Now we get to the late games. Tennessee, the Chargers. This is number right on me. I think Chargers is going to win this one going away. They're pretty well right now. They're going to get the top wild card spot, which is the 5 seed. I mean, their defense has been pretty stout. Justin Herbert's still playing at a pretty darn good level. Top 5 quarterback right now, easily. The Jets and the Cardinals. It's going to come down to whether or not the 40-year-old narcissist coward wants to play like an NFL qualified quarterback. I still don't trust him. But Arizona's they're competing. I give them that. They're competing. I don't know if it's good enough to win, but give me the Jets on the road, albeit very, very slimly. I've been on the Arizona bandwagon this season because I said a couple seasons ago when they hired Jonathan Gannon, they needed to cleanse the culture and almost like rebuild from scratch, and they have a nice foundation going. Problem is, you have the 25th ranked pass offense in the league, and you're going against a Jets secondary led by Sauce Gardner. It's a recipe for disaster. That's a disaster recipe for a loss because they fixated everything on Marvin Harrison Jr. without a legit number 2. I mean, they're trying, but it's just not happening at the moment. Um, but I think that the Jets eke this one out on the road, keep their very, very slim playoff hopes alive. Philly at Dallas. Um, Dak Prescott's on the IR. Dallas is just a hot mess right now. Philly, they're playing good, but I don't think they're playing necessarily great. The only thing they did was a couple weeks ago, they curb stomped Cincinnati, but it's not really saying much. Dallas in recent years has had their number, but I think for people to take Philly anything seriously from this point and to still hang in there to compete with Washington for the NFC East title, they need this game, and I think they go to Dallas and handle business. I don't think it'll be as easy as people think because Dallas has had their own success against Philly in recent years. But give me Philly on the road. A pretty damn good one here Sunday night. It's Houston and Detroit. Detroit's cooking right now. I mean, we talk about Detroit. Um, their offense is just cooking. I mean, cooking. What can you say? I don't care who the opponent is. They're dropping 40, 50 points on you basically effortlessly. I mean, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, is just dining up play after play after play. I mean, what can you say? We talk about the MVP conversations. Jared Goff is in the conversation. I mean, what can you say? I mean, he's played pretty darn well, and they're 7-1. Probably the favorite right now to come out of the NFC for now, because some of the teams might have something to say down the line. But their offense is cooking. Their defense just added Zadarius Smith from Cleveland, which I think is a very, very solid acquisition to help that defense, especially to fill the void that was left when Aiden Hutchinson left for that was lost for the season with that gruesome leg injury. Hopefully he gets back soon. But they're going against a Houston team who's sort of been hit and miss in recent weeks. Didn't help that they lost Nico Collins for a minute and Stephon Diggs for the year. But I think just for this one night, I think Houston is going to find a way to scrap a victory on their home field because they're trying to stem the tide to at least win the AFC South with Indy coming on. I know C.J. Stroud's been hit and miss, but it doesn't help when 2 of your top 3 wide receivers are out. Collins should be back soon, hopefully. But I think Houston scrapes a victory on their home field in a very, very competitive and should be an exciting game. Probably the game of the day on the schedule. And Monday night tilt is in L.A. The Dolphins and the Rams. Dolphins aren't going anywhere. Tyreek Hill's still busy pumping baby mamas all over the place. Going against a Rams team who's starting to find themselves with getting the 2 top receivers back. I think LA is going to take care of business at home. Going to start to get going here for a playoff push and possibly the NFC West title. Give me LA at home, and I think this one to be convincing. So that takes care of the late games and all of my picks. Now, of course, this week was the NFL trade deadline. Probably the most one where it was a lot of more talk on this one that I've seen in the NFL trade deadline in recent weeks. The key ones here, um, we had the receiver ones already. Not too long ago with Amari Cooper to Buffalo, DeAndre Hopkins to Kansas City. Um, I just want to talk about the ones that took place yesterday, which some interesting ones. Tre'Davious White from the Rams to Baltimore. I think he's a solid depth piece in the secondary because maybe a guy you could play some snaps if you want to have an extra secondary guy. Not a full time guy like he was in Buffalo not too long ago, but I think a solid depth piece for Baltimore who needs secondary help the way that pass defense has been cooked this season, which doesn't make sense when you consider the personnel they have with Marlon Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, T.J. Tampa, and Kyle Hamilton. But I think he will help in the limit. He's not a full time player, but he should be able to give enough snaps to help out on time to time. I think is a solid depth piece for the Baltimore Ravens. Uh, Pittsburgh didn't screw around either. I mean, they picked up Mike Williams to play opposite George Pickens, gives Russell Wilson another target in the receiver to throw the ball to, helps spread the field a little bit because Najee Harris is starting to find his mark in Pittsburgh. But getting Preston Scott from Green Bay might be the sneakiest trade on the deadline, simply because he gives them an extra body on the defensive front. He can play interior or exterior. We talk about guys like, if something happens to TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith, he can fill in that void. We talk about the defensive front also with guys like Larry Ogunjobi and Cam Hayward. I had nice little depth of rotation of the defensive front, which has always been the Steelers' trademark over the years. I thought it was a real coup that they got him to help that defensive front. A bit of a shocker because no one thought Preston Scott would be available in a trade. Of course, as I mentioned, Za'Darius Williams from Cleveland to Detroit. I think it's going to help there. That defense is still pretty darn good without Aiden Hutchinson. I think he's going to be a good for this year to fill the void of Hutchinson, who's out for the year, unfortunately. But that Detroit team is cooking right now. Anything they get is basically an added bonus at this point. Interesting one was Dallas trading Carolina for some receiver. Mungu, I think is what it is, for a 4th round draft pick. But it's a case of Jerry Jones being Jerry Jones. I mean, Jerry Jones, as I said, is Jerry Jones. We saw Jerry Jones's true colors in 1994 when he fired Jimmy Johnson after they went back to back in the Super Bowls, basically just canning what could have been an all-time great dynasty because Jerry Jones's ego, his narcissism, his cowardice reveals itself day in and day out, and it's done that for the last 30 years now. Does it again with just training some for a receiver I never even heard of for a 4th round draft pick. Yeah, mind you, they got a 5th and a 6th round pick for Amari Cooper when they sent him to Cleveland a few years back. Makes you wonder what's going on over there in Big D. There's a couple other ones I can't think of. I know the Bengals got a running back, which makes zero sense because they're the Bengals. They like doing things that make no sense. Their fans like doing things that make no sense. Their content creators like doing things that make no sense. That's why the trade for that Herbert character was made, because they like doing things that make no sense. That's pretty much the trade front. Nothing much to talk about because I thought maybe there'd be more activity. Of course, the big brunt of it came a few weeks earlier when Amari Cooper to Buffalo, DeAndre Hopkins to Kansas City, among others. But I thought maybe more. You thought there'd be more than this. Nothing really transpired of significance. Actually, one more I want to touch on. Twist my mind. Marcus Lattimore to Washington. If Marcus Lattimore stays healthy, because health has been an issue with him, they get a secondary guy who helps a secondary that's been absolutely getting cooked for a lot of games this season. Gives them a solid guy, a veteran in the secondary to help out. Question I have is it worth forking out the draft capital they gave? It was like a 3rd, 4th, and a 6th. I mean, it seemed like the Saints fleeced the Commanders out of draft picks for a guy who hasn't been necessarily reliable or healthy for the most part. But if Marcus Lattimore is healthy, I think he will help. But that's the key. hasn't been reliable for the most part. There was talk about him going to possibly Kansas City or Baltimore. Turns out Washington forked out the draft capital to get him. Uh, uh, so let's see where that one goes. Yeah, if Marcus Lattimore's healthy, he'll help, but that's a big if. So that concludes my talk about the NFL. I'd like to touch on some historical aspect of boxing. I don't like talking about much about today. I do shows every now and then, just because too many people are fixated with the political aspect of the sport, and that's why I pick and choose who I deal with. I have a show with a fellow from England. I'm going to get back here next week. Jim, if you're watching, get with me after the show. I need to talk to you. 30 years ago today, the world was introduced to a wild individual. This took place at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada. During the second, during this is round 7 of the second fight between Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe. The world was introduced to a fellow named James Miller, aka Fan Man. It's all over the. If you watch the fight and if you've seen it all over the sports channels, you know who I'm talking about. He's the individual who flew from the top into the top rope of the ring during the second Holyfield fight in round 7. As he was landing on the top rope, if you watch it, you saw Evander Holyfield jump a good 3 feet away from Riddick Bowe. I mean, literally jump to where Riddick Bowe just basically was froze and looking at what was going on. He turns around. There's a fan man hanging on the rope, the top rope, trying to get in. He can't get in. As soon as he's hanging on the top rope, he winds up in a posse of Riddick Bowe's people, and Riddick Bowe's posse just beat the dog wallopers out of him. I mean, there was a walkie-talkie smashed in like 6 pieces after that knocked him out cold. I mean, there's an image of, if you guys want to Google this, of James Miller basically knocked out cold like he's actually asleep. I mean, Jason Harris, Riddick Bowe's bodyguard at the time, just took this big chunk of a walkie-talkie, pulled it up, and just smashed him right across the noggin and just destroyed the walkie-talkie all over the place. I mean, what can you say? Uh, what James Miller is trying to accomplish, I have no idea. Uh, it basically stalled the fight for about around 20 minutes. Security was all over the place. Riddick Bowe's wife, who was pregnant, fainted and wound up having to go to the hospital because I believe she was on the process of having her 5th child at the time. Eddie Futch developed a shortness of breath. Riddick Bowe's trainer, of course, Futch was on the older side of his life at that time. Sort of interrupted what turned out to be a great fight of the great trilogy, which I'll touch on the trilogy here in a minute. But James Miller showed, basically that's who he was. He was a parachutist. He wanted to show the world what he was made of. Called himself the Fan Man. Found dead at a trail in Alaska in 2003. There's mysteries about it. From he basically took his own life to found dead where he was eaten by a bunch of Alaskan sled dogs, which is possible given how crazy and psycho he was. Had his own demons, from how I understood it. But of course, it was 30 plus years ago today at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas where he made his mark when he flew from the wrap top of the outdoor pavilion at Caesar's Palace, landed on the top rope of the Holyfield-Bowe second fight in round 7, and basically put a 21-minute halt to the fight, trying to get the whole thing squared away. The parachute was hanging on the raptors of the lights coming down to the ring. Took a while. It was on a chilly night in Las Vegas. Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe were walking around, basically drenched in extra towels and extra robes, trying to stay warm during all of this. And as it turned out, the fight was able to go on after a 20-plus minute wait. Holyfield goes on to win a majority decision, which, that round, basically did not know this. It was basically a split way scoring of the round. If one judge gave one of the even round, gave that round to Bowe instead of Holyfield, Bowe would have kept his title on a draw. Basically, that what he did that night basically allowed Evander Holyfield to win the heavyweight championship, at least perception wise. So James Miller made his legacy, and that's basically James Miller's legacy. Flying from the top to the top rope of the second Bowe-Holyfield fight. Speaking of Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield, Every November in the boxing world, you know, I always think of these two guys: November of '92, November of '93, and November of '95. Anybody knows follow my boxing shows knows I've said all along the gold standard of boxing trilogies is, was, and always will be the the higher echelon rivalry between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. Nothing is was going to come close or compete. At least I thought. Enter these two guys. When you have a trilogy in a sport like this, the two guys are made for each other. Ali and Frazier was. Ezra Charles and Jersey Joe Walcott back in 1951. Maybe you can point to the ones after it. Barrera Morales, just Gaddy Ward. But if there was a serious challenger to the Ali Frazier throne as a top trilogy in boxing history, Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe, from 92 to 95, fought 3 times in a 4-year period, seriously challenged it. Let's start with 92. The first fight, Evander Holyfield was the champion, undefeated. Riddick Bowe, the undefeated challenger. In a fight that, there was a lot of questions about Evander Holyfield's reign because he fought 40-somethings like George Foreman and Larry Holmes and didn't look all that great. Fought a young upstart in Riddick Bowe, who essentially became the #1 undefeated contender. And basically, after a standoff his first round, Riddick Bowe throws a low blow and all hell breaks loose. These two guys are just wailing away at each other. Basically, Evander Holyfield on his own admission said, after I got hit with a low blow, my mission changed. I wanted to knock the guy out. That's basically where Evander Holyfield messed up because he's fought the strategy, wanted to knock a 235-pound man out. You know, apparently they were sparring partners at one point, and there was issues about Riddick Bowe's, qualifications and habits, known for basically living in the kitchen, stuffing himself, and stamina issues. Um, but Evander Holyfield, but that first fight was basically a firefight, round after round. As the fight wore on, the tension was building between those two. I mean, give and take both ways. But it was a 10th round where everything really got crazy because one uppercut by Riddick Bowe, and I swear, when I saw this uppercut that hurt Evander Holyfield and turned him around, it literally lifted Evander Holyfield off his heels. I thought he was going to the moon. I mean, the uppercut that Riddick Bowe hit Evander Holyfield with in round 10, I thought he was going to the moon because it lifted him up. And now here comes Riddick Bowe just wailing away, throwing punches, head, body, all over the place. Evander Holyfield just basically covering it up for dear life, trying to smother himself in Riddick Bowe to take away some of Bowe's power. And Riddick Bowe is here swinging and swinging and swinging. And it looked like Bowe was going to get win the fight. But halfway through the 10th round, Riddick Bowe stops throwing punches. Here comes Evander Holyfield, and now he has Riddick Bowe hurt. Uppercut after uppercut, left hook, right hand. At the last 10 seconds of the round, a basic 1-2 in the left hook, and Riddick Bowe standing straight up. It looked like he was going to be knocked out till the bell sounded. Evander Holyfield said to this day, if there was at least 20 more seconds, he was going to get the win. I mean, how can you bet against it? I mean, Evander Holyfield was always that guy that always brought it and always, give a great fight. That 10th round, probably a top 5, one of the 10 greatest rounds in heavyweight championship boxing history. It's on the YouTube channel. I highly recommend. That round 10 was just absolutely crazy. 1 minute looked like Holyfield was going to get knocked out. Then the next half of the round, Bowe was about to get knocked out. But was basically it for Evander Holyfield. He gets dropped to round 11. Because, manages to win the 12th round. But both fighters who packed the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas in '92 stand up, applaud the two fighters, and Riddick Bowe walks away with the heavyweight title. In his own weird way, it was a win-win for both fighters because for Bowe, answered a lot of critics, arguably his finest hour. For Evander Holyfield, even though he lost the fight, basically he looked better in losing the fight than he did when he beat guys like George Foreman and Larry Holmes, because there was a question whether he could actually hang with a young upstart like Riddick Bowe. He held his own and held his own quite good, and basically showed the whole world why they called him the Warrior for the longest time. did not back down from him. Me just the courage was there. You showed the heart, the courage, whatever was said. Why he's a warrior. Just the size of Bowe was just too much in that first fight. So that's the first fight of that trilogy. We're going to fast forward to the second fight. Biggest story of this one here was Evander Holyfield hiring the standout Emmanuel Stewart in this corner. And Emmanuel Stewart uh, basically employed a different strategy with Riddick Bowe to where Riddick Bowe would came into this fight 13 pounds overweight and basically was methodical and slow. The strategy for this fight, the second fight, was different from the Evander Holyfield perspective. This was supposed to be the strategy of the first fight, where he's going to be in, put the combinations together, get out, use Riddick both sides to his disadvantage as opposed to an advantage, and it turned out to be the right way. End of the fifth round, looked like Holyfield was going to get a knockout, a jab right, and Riddick Bowe was wobbled. Basically, the bell saves Riddick Bowe. He gets cut inside the nose. A left-right combination just before the bell sounds. Bowe wobbles into his corner. Holyfield is starting to execute his plan perfectly because he had a big round 6 and was starting to have a big round 7, of course, till, as I mentioned, when James Miller flies on top of the rope and basically just throws everything off. The long wait happens, and it turns out the rest helped both fighters, more so Riddick Bowe because he was starting to gasp for breath. He was starting to fall behind on the scorecards. And as the fight went on, we have a replay of Bowe-Holyfield 1. Both guys just went at it. Holyfield again making the trying to fence with a bigger guy. Bowe throwing the uppercuts. Holyfield throwing the counter hooks. Exchanges both ways around. Fight goes a distance. Holyfield wins a majority decision, regains his championship. Now the story here comes, about a year away, Evander Holyfield loses his title to Michael Moore, and then he has the health problems, goes to a faith healer. Riddick Bowe struggles to recapture the form he had that he beat Holyfield with, goes up and down the scales, starts picking up bad habits. He gets a solid win over Jorge Luis Gonzalez. Weeks after, Evander Holyfield got a win over Ray Mercer. Of course, there were some issues on whether or not Holyfield could get licensed in the state of Nevada. And after he finally got the license, the only fight that made sense for him at that time was the third fight with Riddick Bowe, November of 1995. Maybe the most brutal fight of the three. Both guys just took heavy lumber. And from rounds 2 through 5, Evander Holyfield just got a beating delivered to him. Riddick Bowe just threw like between 60 to 90 punches around in those rounds. Evander Holyfield was just, non-existent. Of course, the rumors flying around that he had hepatitis. Stamina level was real low, and Bowe was absolutely just smothering and just smashing him all over the place from rounds 2 through 5, and it looked like he was headed for an easy knockout. The first minute of round 6, a triple left hook by Evander Holyfield, and down goes Riddick Bowe. No one could foresee that. Out of nowhere, after getting walloped in rounds 3, 4, and 5 of that fight, a 6th round left hook, down went Riddick Bowe. Bowe gets up and basically there to be taken, but Evander Holyfield's energy level once again sapped him. He couldn't throw any more punches. Basically, he let Bowe off the hook. Even Holyfield said, "I didn't have the energy to gather myself and just throw a few more punches to end the fight." Fast forward to round 8. Again, Holyfield has him hurt. He's starting to wail away. Out of nowhere, a sneaky right hand, and Evander's face first on the canvas. Holyfield gets up. Bowe floors him a second time. The fight's over. The trilogy of Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe ended in the 8th round on November 4th, 1995. I never thought I would live to tell anyone that there would be a serious challenger to the Ali Fraser trilogy. Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe pretty darn came close. Because these two guys, when they went at it, they went at it. You don't see two heavyweights go at it these days or ever the way Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe went at it. I mean, what can you say? Evander Holyfield's a warrior for a reason. You can smack one on Riddick-Bowe also because he took some hard lumber in these three fights. These two guys. You could talk about before and after all their legacies. Of course, Holyfield beat Mike Tyson. Riddick-Bowe, never reached his full potential, whatever. But when these two guys got in the ring, it's like it's like when you have a rivalry in football or basketball, or whatever. Throw the records out, throw the styles out, throw whatever out, and they basically went at it to and went at it to please the Las Vegas crowd. I mean, these two guys were flat out made for one another, and I don't think you're going to see any elite level heavyweight trilogy that like these two guys put up in for a 3-year period in this month. November of 92, their first encounter. November of 93, their second. November of 95, their third. I mean, what can you say? These two guys were just made for each other. Throw the rule books out. Let's just throw these two guys. If you had the old style fight from 50 years ago, when basically the only rule was you guys go until you get knocked out, these two guys probably would have gone 60, 70 rounds. I mean, these two guys has basically said, we're going to throw down until nobody can go. I mean, the back and forth these two heavyweights had on this particular trilogy was second to none. I mean, what can you say? I mean, I just have to give the biggest shout out to these two. Of course, they had some wild controversies in and out of the ring for whatever reason. But when you got these two at it, and you talk about making history, these two guys made history, maybe a top 5 trilogy in boxing history. To me, this is the second greatest heavyweight trilogy behind Ali Frazier. And boy, did this sure challenge Ali Frazier. The closest thing to challenging Ali Frazier I've ever seen. I mean, evenly matched. I mean, you think on paper, because of Riddick-Bowe's size, he was just overwhelmed with Evander Holyfield. But Evander Holyfield's heart was as big as the country of the United States. I mean, what can you say? He has no fear in anyone. He backs down from no one. He didn't back down from Riddick-Bowe in these 3 fights. Granted, he lost 2 of them, but he didn't back down. That's why this for my lifetime, it's my favorite trilogy. The closest thing to Ali Frazier the modern boxing world ever saw. Just want to give the kudos to Evander Holyfield and Riddick-Bowe for a hell of a trilogy. Evander Holyfield, the crazy thing was after that third fight, no one foresaw Evander Holyfield 1 year later beating the wallops out of Mike Tyson, which I'm going to talk about at the end of the week because I got to unload on Tyson fans a little bit again. But after the third fight with Evander Holyfield, Riddick-Bowe's bad habits caught up to him. Got 2 disqualification wins over Angel Galata, because Angel Galata loves putting his hands where they don't belong. But it was a symbolic of what Riddick-Bowe was. Was a guy who had a hard time getting to whip himself into shape the way he should be. When he beat Evander Holyfield in 92 to win the title, he hit his peak. He had all the potential to be one of the premier all-time greats. I thought Riddick-Bowe, had he won after he beat Evander Holyfield, was going to be for a different era like none other. I mean, a 6'5" big man who wanted to mix it up, had the perfect punch for a 6'5" fighter, the right hand uppercut that absolutely could decapitate you or take you to the moon. I mean, that's what that Riddick-Bowe uppercut was. That's the potential he had. Problem was, it was after that fight. It was basically a case of a blessing and a curse because his then manager Rock Newman was all about the dollars and the theatrics. They threw the belt on the garbage can to Duck Lennox Lewis. Loses the title to Evander Holyfield. They became more about the theatrics. Punched Larry Donald at a press conference. Threw a jug of water at Jorge Luis Gonzalez before their fight. Taunts George Foreman weeks after Foreman won the title because Foreman was doing commentary for the Riddick-Bowe Larry Donald fight. And of course, the riot after the first Bowe-Galata fight was just absolutely nuts. Riddick-Bowe is the poster child. As much as I love Riddick-Bowe, I mean, he and I share a birthday. I mean, how can I not love the guy? Poster child of a guy who basically was good enough to win the title, but no longer cared after he won it. He lived recklessly with just massive yo-yo effects with his weight. We're talking about going from 240 up to 300 down to 240. It takes its toll on you. And that's what happened in the two fights with Andrew Galata. After the second Galata fight, he retired. Of course, he tried the Marines. That didn't go well. Got arrested for some wild stuff with his family. I'm not, I don't even know off the top of my head. Say what you want about Riddick Bowe. Say what you want about Evander Holyfield. But when those two got into the ring 3 times, you knew you got your money's worth watching them go at it. Because Holyfield and Bowe, the trilogy was second to none. I haven't seen any forget heavyweight trilogy. I haven't seen any trilogy since that one that comes remotely close. And that was a serious challenger to Ali Frazier. That's the only one I could legitimately say challenged Ali Frazier as the greatest trilogy in boxing history. You had 4-fight series, you had rematch 2-fight series, but just a 3-fight series. I mean, the top 2 trilogies of all time: Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe. Nothing more to be said. A lot of close ones, but nowhere in that range. Because the ultimate prize was the heavyweight championship of the world when those trilogies happened. And that will wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X, the first ever edition of Primetime. There will be no show tomorrow because I got another 12-hour shift. I will be tweeting during the Cincinnati-Baltimore game. I will be Facebooking during the Cincinnati-Baltimore game. I will be back Friday with another edition of this, and I will, recap the Cincinnati-Baltimore game and some more historical nights for my fight followers. Some real good ones I'm going to touch on, especially for the ones who are still trying to make excuses for Mike Tyson, because I got something for you Friday. Until then, I hope everyone out there has themselves a wonderful night. Actually, nice night here in Cincinnati. It's still like in the mid 60s. Some light sprinkles I can see, but it's nothing to impact me. I've done live shows in the rain because I did it week 3 in Cincinnati. But I enjoyed doing shows outdoors sometimes. I mean, sometimes you get clobbered inside for the longest time, as I do for every now and then. You need to be outside and breathe a little bit. I mean, that's what I'm doing tonight. Hope everyone there enjoys themselves. Good night. Take care, and God bless.